John received the revelation during the tribulation. Revelation 1 verse 9. And then we're going to look at that tribulation which Jesus predicted. Matthew 24 verses 21 and 15 to 20. Okay, so let's go back to the Bible now. So verse 9. It says there, I, John, who also am your brother. Now remember, we'll find this out later on in the book, but we can make the inference anyway from verse 1, because you remember the revelation was to show the apostles, right? Okay, so when John now in verse 9 says, I, John, who am also your brother, he means he's the brother of the apostles and the early Christians, right? And companion in tribulation. So notice, at the time John received the revelation, he was in the tribulation. Now, even though it says in tribulation here, in the Greek, it actually says in the tribulation. And let me just use the Berean literal Bible here to show you. It says, I, John, your brother and fellow partaker. Now, that is even more precise. So John was partaking in the tribulation with his fellow brethren who were the prophets, all right? The prophets of Jesus, which were the apostles, right? So John was saying at the time he got the vision, he was in the tribulation with the other apostles. Now, that also dates the book of Revelation, because it means, therefore, if John was in the tribulation with the apostles, it means he received the revelation before the destruction of Jerusalem. Because the tribulation that occurred with the apostles and the early church happened before the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple. All right? So, and we know this because Jesus mentioned this same tribulation to happen before the destruction of Jerusalem. Let's go back to the King James now and go to Matthew chapter 24 and look at verse 21 first. We'll start at verse 21 and then we're going to backtrack a bit for some context. Okay, so Matthew 24:21, it says there, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So as far as Jesus was concerned, there was only going to be one tribulation. Okay? So this is the tribulation he's talking about, right? Because he says this tribulation is never going to happen again. There never had been one like this, like that, and there was never to be another like it. So this was the singular, only specific tribulation that Jesus mentioned, right? Now, for then, the word there then is tote, meaning at that time, right? So when, for then shall be this great tribulation. When? So we got to back up to see when is he talking about. So we're going to go up now to verse 15. It says here, when ye, speaking to his disciples, when ye therefore shall see, so this is something that his disciples would see. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. Now this is something that people are still looking forward for. But Jesus said here that his disciples, the ones to whom he was speaking to, they would see it. And where would they see it? It says, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, in the temple at Jerusalem. Okay? Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So notice where this abomination would happen. In Judea. In the temple, which is the holy place, which was located in Jerusalem, which was located in Judea. So, but today people are still looking for this abomination of desolation, and some looking in Rome. Some say that the Jews have to build a new temple, a third temple, that which an antichrist will come and make it commit an abomination in it and make it desolate and all these sorts of things. But as far as Jesus was saying, this abomination would happen at a time when his disciples and apostles and the early church would be able to see it. So it would happen in their generation, not thousands of years later. It says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down and take anything out of his house. We did this study already when we went through Matthew 24 in detail. Okay, so if you want to learn more about what Matthew 24 is actually all about, you can go back into the channel and look under the full studies playlist, and you'll see that study there, which deals with Matthew 24. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes, and woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not into the winter, neither under the Sabbath day, for then shall be the great tribulation. So notice the context of the great tribulation. It is at the time when the abomination of desolation would appear in Judea. And it would be at the time when the disciples, the apostles, and the early church would see that abomination of desolation, not thousands of years later. Jesus was talking about things that happened in that generation. Okay, so the tribulation, this great tribulation that is mentioned here, happened in Judea, or happened during the time, of the abomination of desolation in Judea, in the temple that was still standing. Okay, which means that John was in this great tribulation, and if he was in that great tribulation, then he received the revelation before the temple was destroyed, because the abomination of desolation happened in the temple in Judea at the time of the great tribulation. Do you see it? All right, so let's go back to Revelation now, verse 9. So John received the revelation at the time of the great tribulation. So he had to have received that revelation before the temple was destroyed.